Oh, there've been a lot of changes, yeah. I've lived took in all the changes. Yeah, like I was a little boy, you know, at home. And my grandmother used to dry the fish, you know, in the smokehouse. Then when the fish got dried, it was just hard as a board. Real hard. That's the way the Indians dried their fish. Then she'd tell me in the evening, you know, take this dry salmon down to the river and throw it in the river. Tie a bale of hay wire onto the fish, then tie it onto a limb and leave it in the water all night. So the next morning, she'd send me down again after the dry salmon. And I'd go down and bring the dry salmon back into the... We lived in a smokehouse. It's a long house, but they call them smokehouse. And I'd bring the fish back up. She'd cut them up and throw them in a pot and boil them up. Boiled potatoes, that's what we'd have for breakfast, dried fish. And that fish was just so nice and tender after it had been soaked in the river all night. It was just nice and tender, you know. You could eat it without teeth. Real good fish, good eating.
This is Bill Frank. He's 91 years old. He remembers how it used to be.
And we mostly lived on dried fish and fresh fish and all different kinds of fish, you know, that they come up the river. This river, Nisqually River, we lived up there about 5 miles from here, the mouth of Muck Creek. There must have been a village there. There were 3 of these long houses there, 3 smoke houses. When I come to, you know, and I come into real life things.
This is the Nisqually Indian Reservation, created under the provisions of the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. Like most reservation land, it was later allotted to individual Indian families. When Bill Frank was born in 1879, his family lived on their allotment of 205 acres.
Now, Dad, when you was living back over here on your property across the river, was there a lot more fish, Dad, at that time than there is today?
Oh, yes. The river was just full of fish. All these creeks were full of fish. Yellow Creek, Muck Creek. Yeah. Several other creeks on up toward the La Grande.
During World War I, the Army condemned the reservation land on the east side of the river for Fort Lewis. All the families on that side of the river were removed from their homes, and the government decided what compensation they were going to receive. Bill Franks received 6 acres, several miles downstream from the reservation, and it is still held for him in federal trust like allotted reservation land. This is the place still known today as Frank's Landing. Bill Frank lives here. His wife, Angeline, lives with him.
Make your wish. Blow the candle out.
His son, Bill Jr., lives here too, with his wife, Norma, their 2 children, Sugar and Maureen. Bill Frank Jr. and his family live in this house. And in this house lives Maiselle, Grandpa's daughter, with her husband, Al Bridges. Elle and Maiselle have 3 daughters, the youngest, Allison, and Valerie. Their oldest daughter, Suzette, lives here with her husband, Sid Mills, and the baby, Poughton. And then there's Herman Johns, better known as Curly, another of Bill Frank's grandchildren. This is the family that lives at Frank's Landing. During the summer, they work at various jobs, frequently in neighboring berry fields and tree farms. But when autumn comes and the salmon start running, Bill Frank's family, like all their ancestors, set their nets for fish. They smoke some for themselves and they sell some, even as their ancestors did when they traded dried salmon for articles from the interior. Now, one thing is different than it used to be. Now, when they set their nets in the evening, the game wardens sit and watch from the other side of the river.
There's no jurisdiction on this property. There's no court to tell that you have jurisdiction on this property.
We are arrested. That is illegal. We're going to have to seize it at this time. Hey, Sydney, you're under arrest.
My father and Sid were arrested off the landing here. So the following day, to let them know that we weren't going to quit fishing, Allison and I, my younger sister, set a net up there at the trestle, about a mile and a half from here, upriver.
In 1854, Territorial Governor Isaac Stevens made treaties with all the Indians in Washington. The Indians gave up all claims to the land in the territory except for special areas reserved to them. In return, they were to receive payments and were promised that they and their descendants would always have the right to fish in their usual and accustomed grounds. Valerie Bridges grew up learning how to fish here on the Nisqually, where her grandfather fished.
Valerie, you heard when your grandfather told of a white man who came with promises of gold, saying, sell us the land that lies under the sun. You'll live free as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run.
We set the net and waited for the state. We're just going to let them know that we're not going to quit fishing. We have this fishing right. It's a treaty, supreme law of the land under their constitution. And we're not going to give up our fishing rights. There are treaties throughout the United States being broken. That's really what it is, a treaty we're fighting for. Treaties throughout the United States. We resisted when they did try to take our net because it is our property, and not only protecting our property, but ourselves, because we too have been clubbed, night raids, tear gas, and we're getting sick and tired of it.
He promised us gold. He promised us grain, he promised us houses safe from the rain. He said that his words could not be undone, but would last for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run.
A lot of people have asked, how long I've been involved in this, or my family. And I go back to when my little girl was 2.5 years old, my youngest girl, and she'll be 19 next month. When she was 2.5 years old was the very first time that her dad was arrested and did 30 days in jail. This was her first experience in going into a judge's courtroom, if you can call it JP courtroom.
Maiselle Bridges, Bill Frank's daughter, Valerie, and Allison, and Suzette's mother.
And they did this in the space of 2-3 hours. Like, they took him in, they sentenced him and put him right into jail. So my girls, all 3 of them, have been involved in this fishing struggle practically all their lives.
Lefshy said no, he was caught, he was hung. The treaty was made, nothing else could be done. We said, we'll keep our promises if you keep just one. Let us fish for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run.
The U.S. Supreme Court confirms that the treaty is still valid, but they say the state also has the right to impose conservation regulations. The Washington Fisheries and Game Department say that to conserve the fish, the mouth of the rivers must remain closed to net fishing. But the river mouths always were the fishing grounds of the Indians. And once again, Al Bridges has to hawk a motor to bail a daughter out of jail.
Valerie, you knew all this history well, but you saw your father being taken to jail, and you vowed you would fight for your people till we'd won what was ours for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run.
Well, I think they're using, the state is using the term conservation as a weapon against the Indian to stop us altogether from fishing. You know, when you speak of conservation, if they're going to conserve, they should start conserving out in the outer waters, particularly in the Puget Sound. After the fish leave the Straits of Juan de Fuca, you can go out here in the Puget Sound when they're fishing out there and find numerous commercial boats, and their take. One purseine boat out there in the Sound can take probably, more fish in one day than our whole group here can take in one season. There's various ways that the Indian has always practiced conservation. This was done almost automatically. Not only did they allow an escapement, but elements of nature provide for escapement, or used to. But from when the treaty was first signed in 1854, when we ceded the land didn't mean that we gave up our hunting and fishing rights. We think that we should be able to fish this way, and fish and hunt this way, and live this way, live off the resources, the natural resources. This is probably what you'd call the Indian's last stand. Otherwise, you're just there'll no longer be what's known as an Indian or an Indian way of life. I know some boys around here, in fact, that if they were to be taken to a city, they'd want to come back to this kind of living. One in particular already has a trade as a welder, but he said, if I have to live in the city in order to make a living of that sort, then I'll go back out in the country and hoe berries or do something. It just is so I can get back to my way of my way that I want to live, and this is the Indian way. We used to think that we'd find justice in the courts. This was before we'd be arrested, and we'd be taken to jail, and we'd serve our time. Then we'd come back out, and then we'd hide around and fish. We found out that we weren't getting justice in the courts, so in order to find some sort of a solution for this, we figured that if we got the public interested enough to where they'd see what's going on in the courts, that we would get some sort of justice.
And then in 1964, we just said, well, we're not moving no more. And one of the first things we did was to organize a Indian organization. And this is what we did. We called ourselves the Survival American Indian Association. And our main goal and purpose of this organization was to fight for treaty rights. And from that time on, the fight has been building up, and gradually it's really, you know, taken up our full time.
In 1968, the Survival Organization enlisted the support of sympathetic young people to help keep a 24-hour guard on the nets of the Indian fishermen, because if the nets and boats were unguarded, they would be stolen by fishermen or destroyed by sportsmen.
If you want something and if it's yours, you've got to fight to keep it. And our people just aren't grasping this idea. They think that one of these days the government's going to feel sorry for them and give them what they want. This isn't so. So we have these young kids of today. Right now they see what's happening to the Indians, so they come forward to offer their help, and we've accepted their help.
Fishermen and sheriff deputies came at night, making arrests and seizing nets, but the young people held on. As fall turned into winter, they built temporary shelters and lived in them. Buffy St. Marie visited the encampment. To dramatize the fishing rights, the Frank Landing encampment moved into Olympia and set a net at the mouth of the dam where there is a fish ladder. The fishery officers and police responded, giving the public a chance to see the kind of action that usually takes place under the cover of night on the Nisqually River. Come gather round me and I'll sing you a song. I'll tell you a story of people that were strong. We live with nature in harmony, obeying the laws that were taught to me. Greeting a stranger with an open hand, sheltered and fed him and called him friend. Once I was wild as the eagle in the sky, free to love and to live and to die. I roamed this land from the mountains to the sea, brother to the elk, the bear and the deer. Up the rivers, the lakes, and the redwood tree. This was my land as far as I could see. I had no jails nor prison farm, no barbed wire to do me harm. I paid no one to rule over me. No one owned the shade of the tree. I swam the
Now we have another beautiful young red sister, Suzette Bridges. Yeah! You know, when we go out and talk to all these citizens of America, we tell them, you better do something about your government, because your government is awfully sick, and it's trying to make our people sick. And I keep trying to explain to these people, we're never, never, never going to be like them. And I don't know what's wrong with Dad Evans, and I don't know what's wrong with Don Carlson. Why is it that they keep practicing genocide on my people? And I keep telling him that he better get his ass in jail.
Of the people who came to help in '68, only one stayed. Sid Mills, a Yakima Indian stationed at Fort Lewis, announced he would not go back to the Army. Instead, he remained at Frank's Landing and married Suzette. A year later, dozens of cases were still in court. The survival of American Indian Association was broke. So once again, the family at Frank's Landing was alone on the Nisqually River. The day came that Al, Sid, Valerie, and Allison were all in jail. Suzette had just had a baby, Poughton. So Maiselle Bridges and Norma Frank were left to fish by themselves.
Illegal gear, and it's going to be taken.
You must take us with it, because we're not letting go fishing under Medicine Creek Treaty, and we're both all members. We are too.
You're poaching is what you're doing.
We're not either. You're the one that's poaching. You're the ones that's encroaching on our land.
Hook that in.
We're not taking this net. This is the last net we got.
Both under arrest for fishing and so far.
And then something happened that was felt around the world. A group of Indians captured and held Alcatraz Island and claimed it in the name of all tribes. Indians from all over came together to experience unity and strength. The girls and Sid went down with Poughton as soon as they learned about it. Elle and Maiselle and Curly came a little later with a carload of food and clothes sent by the Washington Indians.
Now you know when I was close on the crossing. I'm going to close it where it's
Yes,
they work for the United States. What did they hold?
They help at the state regulate, where they allow the first aid boats and the unitors to come right in within 4 miles of our area.
When they got to the docks, they were greeted by an old friend, John Vigil, who had fished with them at Frank's Landing the winter before. He was one of the first to occupy Alcatraz and agreed to take them on a tour.
Up there in the warden town. Indian flag flying high. Artichokes, huh?
Oh, artichokes?
Looks like a poppy.
Like nobody's going to be climbing up them hills.
How pretty it is.
Try to overrun this island.
Alcatraz had been one of the things that the Indians had known was possible for them to do. Those that knew of the laws created by the federal government in the nature of the treaties, they knew they had exclusive reversionary title to the place. There was an approach by the older conservatives, but the youth became immediately dissatisfied. And 14 of us hired a fishing boat found a fishing boat captain who wasn't afraid to take us to the island. We all paid him $3 each, and he took us on across, man. And we went there, not really knowing fully what to expect, but we knew that we were within our rights.
Well, they had a Thanksgiving dinner here, you know, except they invited everyone except Puritans. There's 2 ducks here and a turkey for livestock.
Oh!
This here is machine gun Kelly cell. Machine gun Kelly cell right here.
No different from anybody else?
No.
Compromise had been the full demise of the Indians. This became fixed in our minds that as long as we were there as representatives of our people, that we couldn't compromise their rights in any way. And this gave our total commitment to remaining on the island at any cost. Alcatraz was only 16 of the 30 million surplus federal acres. When the Indians actually take possession, their land holdings still won't be as extensive as they were in the original treaties. So, because originally outlined in the treaties were 155 million acres approximately. And their land holdings now are only 50 million. The 30 million surplus acres are theirs, you know, because various forts and things that were established on the reservations and wartime military use diminished those lands. And there's been a lot of illegal sale of Indian lands. That's why Alcatraz, that's the Alcatraz idea. We're going to no longer compromise.
After Alcatraz, suddenly everyone was interested in Indians and their problems. But the Indians remembered the many years of slow, determined struggle by Indian groups all over the country to protect Indian rights and to build Indian unity. They knew that the Alcatraz idea was meaningless unless this unity and strength could be felt wherever Indian families were stubbornly holding on to what was left of their land and their way of life. The scene is repeated again and again. There is no longer room for compromise. It's a question of survival as Indians, and it's a question of survival as human beings, because the Indian sees the white man tampering with the forces of nature, moving mountains, rivers, destroying sources of food and water. This is the Muckleshoot Indian Reservation on the White River. Last night they put nets in the river, and this morning they tried again, but there were no fish, and the Indian know why.
Then the fish got less. What's no more then? There used to be a lot of fish here long ago. You know, this regular, they're mountain fish. They go way up. See? They don't spawn here. They go way up on them little streams, way up on the mountains. See, and they built that dam. Then the fish got less, then there was no more.
Also, Mud Mountain Dam, when they let out water, they let out a great deal of what they call silt. We lost 35 to 400,000 fish when they were coming up to spawn because they know the fish can't breathe in silt. So they, totally destroyed that run. Well, matter of fact, we asked the federal government to plant fish for us, and they planted them, but we lost them because of inadequate system up on that diversion by Puget Power. We lost over 3,000 fingerlings there.
The inter-county flood control system. They push all this gravel back and forth and scrape all the hard pan off it. Then when the river comes up, there's nothing but sand and gravel flowing, and it kills the fish right there.
And the land that borders the river line is slowly being beaten out of us by the white man because they are buying it out. Some of it we don't know if it's bought out, leased, or where the heirs are, how much money came from it. But that's our main interest here, is to find out for sure if it really was leased, if it was sold, or just what's happening.
This here is a diversion made by a landowner who has bought an Indian land, and before you divert any river, you have to have a permit from the state. We asked the state prosecutor to bring necessary legal action to put the stream back in its original form, since where he diverted this river there's a spawning stream, and this has been totally destroyed. Right here we have a dying river. It's a river that's slowly dying because of numerous factors. You find that we have several polluters, industrial polluters, trying to hide what they're putting in the river. The tribe at this time has gotten an attorney, and we're beginning to institute legal actions to protect the river, our resource.
Do you think that the Indians lived better long time ago before they become modernized in the degree they are today?
Oh yeah, the Nisqually Indian. He lived in paradise, the Nisqually Indians here. Everything grew here. Like the white man calls it roots now, roots. Well, I guess they were roots because they grew out of the ground. There were carrots, potatoes, onion, plant like an onion. It had layers all around it. And a whole lot of other plants, you know, the Indian used to gather up and bake. They take it down the river where there's a big jam and a lot of wood. Then they bake all this stuff all together. And they had one little plant that looked like a carrot, but it was very little. It was short black, it was black. And it was sweet, very sweet. And they sweetened all these other roots, you know, that they baked. That one carrot would sweeten all the other fruits, like cabbage. And the sunflower, root of the sunflower. They cooked that. That made nice eating and everything. And game, grouse, pheasant, all kinds of birds, you know, on the trees. You could hear them. They just ring in the woods, the grouse. They're called grouse. They ring the woods. There were so many of them around on the trees there. And the Indian had plenty bird to eat and plenty game like deer, you know, and beaver and bear and all that. There was plenty of everything, yeah. I think the Nisqually Indian, yeah, was living the perfect life, and he was living, he didn't have to cultivate this stuff. They grow them. Mother Nature made them grow every year. No getting the, what you call the mixed things grow like the white man's got to the fertilizer. Nobody fertilized all that stuff. It just come up itself every year. Why these Indians were living in paradise, that's what I always said, before white man came. Then the white man come with a lot of sheep. Unload them right here at Muckleshoot down here, just around the bend here. The sheep loads of sheep to unload off the ship and run them. This was all open country. The whole country from Chehalis down here up to the Puyallup Valley. On top of the hill there, it was all open.
What what happened when they brought the sheep in?
Well, the sheep just went out and grazed and ate all the grass there was, you know, see.
Destroyed the roots that you used to gather?
Yeah, the old Indians said they left nothing, the sheep did.
No more wild carrots, onions, or
no
potatoes?
No more, yeah, no more. The Indian never, he had to live like the white man now, buy flour, buy coffee and like that, you know. Learn to bake bread and all like that.
The Indian people, the young Indians today are caught between two cultures. The white man is pulling the Indian people into their culture, but the Indians have always been brought up to be Indians, you know. They've lived the Indian way all their lives, and they're caught between these two, and I feel that the Indians are really mixed up, you know, because the only way they can make it in this society is to be a white man. but they can't. You know, the young Indians today are realizing that this society is sick and that they don't want to have any part of it. I mean, you know, like they know that, like during Geronimo's days and during Crazy Horse's days, that the white man killed our people. And they're doing the same thing here today. They're killing our people because the way this system is set up, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And in the old days, the Indians weren't that way. When their brothers or sisters were couldn't make it, then they were there, right there to help them. And I think, you know, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you know, they're set up to help the Indians, to make settlements for the Indian people, but they're selling the Indian people down the drain. The schools that they set up are below the standard, the regular standard of education of a public school, and they make the Indians ashamed of what they are. But the Indians have something that the white man will never have. They have a culture that they could be proud of, that they should be proud of.
Valerie Bridges was one of the organizers of a weekly dance in Tacoma. Not long ago, people believed the Indians were a vanishing race, but the Indians are not dying out. More and more young Indians are trying to learn about their culture and traditions. That doesn't mean just dancing and handicraft. It means returning to a way of life in harmony with the land and each other. It means helping Indian brothers and sisters who have fallen in despair in the cities.
Well, why don't you tell us? Why don't you just say in your own words what you have in mind here?
Senator, we'd like to be able to read it to you.
How long is it going to take?
It won't take too long, Senator. Dear Senator Jackson, Kanachitopi Indian Council is submitting a proposal to obtain the United States Army land and buildings at Fort Lawton for use as a multi-service center and a cultural, vocational, and higher education center for all American Indian and Alaska Natives. Statistics recently published by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare indicate that there are over 3,000 Indian families in Greater Seattle, amounting to approximately 12,000 persons. The vast majority are at or below a poverty level of $1,200 per year. The educational level is a 7th grade average. Basically, we propose to use the 16 immediately available buildings and the surrounding area to contain our existing services and provide adequate space to help Indians and Alaska Natives solve these problems. We would point out that several of these programs are already funded and in operation, but are seriously limited due to inadequate physical facilities. We believe the time has now arrived for the Indian to use his own initiative, take charge of his own destiny, and at the same time help him make a contribution to greater society.
Now, the law provides that after the military services have given their requirements, then the proposal is circulated among all federal agencies as to their needs. And they have, I think, 60, what is it, how many days is it?
Normally 30 days.
30 days in which to make the request. So you will have to go through the Department of Interior as to pure Indian matters, HUD on the housing and OEO and so on.
Funding and so forth.
So I can only emphasize very strongly the need to, follow the law on that, because otherwise you wouldn't be eligible.
We're going to do it right
now.
Well,
we're going to look around and try to
over.
And we'll have a better picture of it, and we'll carefully consider all of this.
He wasn't even paying attention. Well, that's how they all are. Said, well, I'm too busy. I got things to do. I got to do this, And you should have an alternative. Tell the cat that we got to know in a week, because Indian children are dying today. There's people starving or leaning up against the fence tonight sleeping. Maybe some of these ideas that you say should have been expounded, and I'm sorry I didn't think about it. What I'm saying is, and if it takes to occupy the place to show the man that we really need it now, then we're going to have to do it.
Tomorrow, we shall leave his hand to reclaim part of our own land that has been taken away from us, never been paid for.
A war dance was held. The plan to occupy the surplus land at Fort Lawton was announced. The next morning, Indians stormed the fort from every direction. Some climbed fences, some came up the cliffs from the beach, some rushed through the gates. The army closed in on scattered groups of Indians. Women were knocked to the ground. Men were clubbed. Cameras were smashed. Movie film and tapes were destroyed. 64 people, the youngest of them 3 years old, were held all day in 2 cells. After most of them had been released, a dozen military men fell on those remaining and beat them in their cells. The Indians tried to tell their story, but the army denied everything. Next week, the Indians came again, this time in one group, silently climbing the cliffs in the dark of night, waiting just under the edge of the bluff until the first light of morning.
Where's he at? Alpha 1, here we listen. We are in position. We are on the Fort Locke Indian Reservation. We have erected a teepee. About 50 of us are waiting for the Indians to arrive. There they come. Try the council here. All council people over here. Hey, guys. Now try to hit anything off. I think we ought to send a couple, 3 people down here under flag of truce. Let them know that this is a peaceful, non-violent settlement. And we don't want to interfere with the military operation.
Let's have a flag of truce. Who's got a handkerchief?
I did. Put it on the walkie-talkie. No, they're not going to have it. Yeah. Put it on down the road, please. The other one. I used to see this in the movies and laugh like, He said that, man, we can't stay here.
We were informed that they had 35,000 troops at his disposal, and he will call them if necessary.
A few, including the movie cameraman, fled back down the cliff, pursued by MPs. The others waited, allowing themselves to be taken away without resisting. Federal trespassing charges were filed against them. The Indians were defeated once again by the U.S. Army. Young Sugar Frank spent his first day in jail, and his family knew that there would be more times, many more times for all of them, and that they would go on fighting because they saw more and more Indian people coming together. In victory and defeat, they were being united. And then, the cruelest blow of all, for this family, which had suffered so much before. One day, Valerie Bridges came home, hot and tired from working in the strawberry fields. She went to bathe and swim in the Nisqually River. Much later, her family missed her and began to search. It may have been a sudden cramp, No one is sure, but they found her body at the bottom of the river. There's no goodbye. There is no goodbye. May our trails cross many times as we travel toward the setting sun of life. And when we meet, may they flow through my hand as I gently touch your arm. Happiness in seeing you again. Soon people began to arrive. Indians from Canada, Oregon, Idaho. Indians from Alcatraz, many relatives, and many people who knew her in the struggle for Indian rights. Indians came together from all over the West because they had always come together at times of need and sorrow. We returned Valerie's body to the earth, and then we shared a feast in her honor to remind ourselves that we would be together again. And in their suffering, the family at Frank's Landing was reminded that the Indian people still had a strength and unity unlike anything the white man had. They vowed to continue in the struggle to which Valerie had given all of her short life.
Valerie, you heard when your grandfather told of white men who came with promises of gold, saying, sell us the land that lies under the sun. You'll live free as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run. Can we sell the mountains? Can we sell the sky? Can we sell the graves where our fathers lie? Can we sell our mother, sell the earth, sell the sea? Just let us live by the river and fish and be free.
Indian people everywhere are beginning to look back for the strength and wisdom that was theirs long before the white man came with his promises. From many tribes and nations, people are traveling around the country, sharing knowledge of their Indian teachings and news of their struggle for Indian rights. Some of the people who came to Frank's Landing stayed to help. Everybody decided to join in a united stand on the Puyallup River. The Puyallup Tribal Council had discovered a tiny piece of land in Tacoma between the railroad tracks and the sewage treatment plant that had never been sold and was still Puyallup Reservation. Here they set up a camp and announced that they were going to fish and protect their nets with armed guards.
The Indian people are beginning to realize that there's nobody going to stand up and fight for them, that we've got to do it ourselves, and we're realizing this.
They're starting to realize, that they shouldn't go in the Army and everything else.
Sid and Suzette Mills went to live in the Puyallup camp.
It's going to take, for Indian people to get away from the United States. And be a sovereign nation like they're supposed to be. It's going to take, but everyone to get together as one. The camp was set up, because the pigs came down there and beat up Indian people, for fishing and just for being there. And so we had to, protect ourselves. So we got our own police force, or security guard, or whatever you want to call it, to protect the kids and the women and even the men, that are in the camp from being harassed by the pigs. And they're protecting our equipment like we stated we was going to do. And they came down with about 300-500 pigs, and started writing.
He promised us gold, he promised us grain, he promised us houses safe from the rain. He said that his words could not be undone, but would last for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run. No one owns the mountains, no one owns the sky, no one owns the graves where our fathers lie. No one owns our mother, who is the earth, who is the sea. We want to live by the river and fish and be free. Leshai said no, he was caught, he was hung. The treaty was made, nothing else could be done. We said, we'll keep our promises if you keep just one. Let us fish for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run. Where now are your promises? You have stolen our homes. You display in museums our ancestors' bones. We're not afraid of your guns or the words that you say. We just want to fish by the river and live our own way. They are stronger than us with their courts and their jails, but the strength of the earth and the sky never fails. We've the power of the river, the light of the sun, and we'll live for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run. From the oceans of ice to the deserts of sand, our people are gathering to rescue the land. Valerie, we promise the fight's just begun, and will last for as long as the rivers run, as long as the rivers run.
Years of struggle, beatings, jails, thousands of dollars to bail bondsmen. And at the end of 1970, what was there to show for it? Actually, the Indians had made a couple of steps forward. They were winning a few cases in court. The state was finding it harder and harder to defend its policy of complete prohibition of net fishing on rivers. So the Fishery Department opened temporary Indian fishing season. Puyallup, Nisqually, Muckleshoot, and Skokomish began to haul in record catches of silver salmon. But the fish buyers dropped their prices to as low as 10 cents a pound. Once again, the Indians found it necessary to get together. At Frank's Landing, they began buying fish from Indian fishermen at 40 cents a pound. Young Indians, some of whom had first got together on Alcatraz and had just been released on bond from the Tacoma jail, were now putting in long hours of cleaning and packing fish. Several tons were shipped to New York, Florida, San Francisco, where they could bring up to $1 a pound.
The Indian people here will, they'll be continuing on in the struggle until they do have their, undisputed right, to fish for a livelihood.
We have the Puyallup encampment on the Puyallup Indian Reservation, and we have the state of Washington coming in and dragging Indian people off Indian land and throwing them in jail for 3 or 4 days with these ridiculously high bails. And, you know, the Indian people get this in their head. And, you know, like it's in my head that there's nobody going to stand up and fight for us. There's nobody we can look to but ourselves. And like we set up this fish processing project. We buy fish from nearby Indians right here on Frank's Landing. And this is to eliminate the middleman, to eliminate that other way of killing us by dropping the fish price when the fish are coming in the hardest, you know. And like we're trying to buy them on a level where the Indian people can support themselves. Just like, you know, very soon the steelhead are going to be running in this river. And we're still going to be here fishing as we've always been, you know, like we've been in the past centuries. I have a son that's going to keep on fishing even after I'm gone because he's a fisherman. It's his heritage. You know, we're just going to keep on fighting for as long as it takes.
Once I was wild as the eagle in the sky, free to love and to live and to die. I roam this land from the mountains to the sea, brother to the elk, the bear and the deer. Up the rivers, the lakes and the redwood trees, this was my land as far as I could see. I had no jails nor prison farm, no barbed wire to do me harm. I paid no one to rule over me, no one owned the shade of the tree. I swam the ocean with the mighty shark, played with the dolphin when the moon was dark. Come be as wild as the eagle in the sky, free to love and to live and to die. We'll roam this land from the mountains to the sea, brother to the elk, the bear and the deer. Up the rivers, the lakes and the redwood trees, we'll live together in harmony.
Oh,